right, good evening, everyone. I've got 6:30. Happy Groundhog's Day to everyone. I'm Mayor Tome here to call to order the Columbus Common Council regular meeting for Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. This evening in the council chambers, we have Deputy Clerk Jane Foodie stepping in for Clerk Gable this evening. We have Administrator Ellefson. We have Alder McCabe, Alder Ryan, myself, and Alder Pfeiffer present in the chambers, and everyone else is on Zoom. So with that, when you're ready, could you please take a roll call for us, Jane?
Adams?
Present.
Gray?
Present.
McCabe?
Here.
Pfeiffer?
Here.
Reed? Here. Ryan?
Here.
And Tome.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. If able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. The next item is to approve the agenda for the evening. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Pfeiffer on a second from Ryan to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Correspondence and communications. We had no one signed up in person this evening, and we had no one signed up in advance on Zoom. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for January 19th, and we have one application for operator's license for the term of July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2022. The name of the applicant is Jessica McNichol. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? If there are no questions on the consent agenda, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion from Ryan, second from Gray to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on that? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Thank you. We'll move on to new business item number 1, which is consider and take action on the SMA for Transportation Alternatives Program Grant, or the TAP grant. This was reviewed at the Committee of the Whole meeting. The city engineer recommends the city, I've got the wrong tab here. City of Columbus was awarded the TAP grant from Wisconsin DOT to complete bike and pedestrian trails throughout the city. This agreement has been reviewed by administration, planning, zoning, legal, and engineering staff with the recommendation for approval. Any questions on the TAP grant program award? Or the SMA for the Transportation Alternatives Program grant? This is the state municipal agreement. Any questions? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the SMA for the TAP grant.
McCabe will make a motion to approve the SMA TAP grant.
Gray will second.
Motion from McCabe, second from Gray to approve the SMA for the TAP grant. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, could we please take a roll call, Jane?
McCabe?
Aye.
Gray?
Aye.
Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Reed? I'm sorry. Ryan?
Aye.
And Adams?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. New business item number 2, consider and take action authorizing the final payment for the wastewater treatment plant influence screen replacement project and giving notice the work is acceptable. Again, this was reviewed at the last committee of the whole meeting. The city engineer recommends the city makes the final payment and that the city gives notice that the work is acceptable. The city attorney has also reviewed multiple lien releases submitted for subcontracting firms and found the documents submitted to be in order. The recommendation is to authorize the city administrator to make the final payment to the contractor and give notice that the work is acceptable. Are there any questions on this? All right, if there are no questions, I'll take a motion to approve or authorize the final payment for the wastewater treatment plant project.
Adams moves to approve or to authorize the final payment to the contractor and give notice that the work is accepted.
Seconds.
All right, motion from Adams, second from Reed to approve or authorize the final payment for the wastewater treatment plant influence screen replacement project and giving notice that the work is acceptable. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, could you please take a roll call? Jane?
McCabe,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
and Gray.
Aye.
Great, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 3, consider and take action on claims in the amount of $2,494,195.40. Obviously, that number is much higher than usual because we've collected taxes here at the city, and those payments are going out to the other taxing jurisdictions such as the county and the school district, etc. Are there any questions on the claims? If there are no questions on the claims, I'll accept the motion to approve the claims in the amount read.
Alder Pifferle will make a motion to approve the claims in the amount read.
Alder Gray will second.
A motion from Pifferon, a second from Gray to approve the city claims as submitted. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, could we please take a roll call, Jane?
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Claims are approved. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 4, report of city officers. I'll turn it over to City Administrator Ellison.
Thank you. Just a couple items tonight. Dave Dernberger, he's joining us again this evening. Obviously, he started about 2 weeks ago as the Public Works Director, and we've been working together to coordinate handing off of some projects and kind of onboarding, but really the snow has upended some of those plans a bit and taken sort of a primary role lately. So it's a lot to take on, and I think Dave's done a really good job. And the DPW crew has pitched in to help make that transition as smooth as possible, and I really appreciate that. So as we're looking at more snow later this week, it's always a good feeling to have the solid crew behind us. So I do appreciate that. Speaking of the crew that we have, John Namer, I think we mentioned 2 weeks ago, announced his retirement, and Friday was his last day. And so that's obviously 40 years is something to be pretty proud of, and I offer John congratulations for that. Unfortunately, on the other side of that is then we have 40 years of experience that we have to, replace at the plant, which is very difficult, if not impossible, to do. So on top of that challenge, we unfortunately had another one of our 3 total positions over there let us know that they'll be leaving in the next 2 weeks. So we'll be down to a single employee at the wastewater treatment plant. Staffing will obviously be a challenge. We're sort of working right now on the short-term immediate plans to pull together the resources we need to keep functioning. And I want to mention that Water and Light has been incredibly helpful as well, offering their staff not only to help with the plant and to help us get some emergency certifications in order, but also with the plowing crew that consists also of our wastewater treatment plant staff. They've offered some of their staff to, as they can, to help us out. So it's been kind of a coming together of a lot of our resources, but we're going to find our way through it. And I think later tonight we'll be talking about the position description for John's positions. So just kind of, just know there's a lot of pieces moving right now, and Dave is working to get them all working the best way possible, and we're trying to pull together the support we need to, I guess, just kind of keep it running as smoothly as we can. And that's all I have.
I did want to thank Dave as well. I know we introduced him 2 weeks ago, and he probably feels like he's been drinking from a fire hose since the day he's gotten here with the amount of snow we've got in the past couple weeks. I know he's a native of Wisconsin, but he did come in from Georgia, so this is quite the welcome the last couple weeks. So I appreciate the work that you do and the work of the DPW staff and the snowplow crews for keeping the streets clean, so I appreciate that. Also, wanted to add that today there was another monthly COVID-19 free testing site at the Columbus Water and Light plant put on by Columbia County. The tests were administered by the National Guard from noon until 6 p.m. this evening. I did take advantage of the free test myself today, and I was very pleased at how easy it was to pre-register online. There was virtually no wait at about 4 p.m., so I was in and out in a matter of minutes. The free testing will be available again in March at Columbus Water and Light, so please look for details on the city website or the Columbia County website for pre-registration and testing information for the next event. Also a reminder that our next city council meeting has been rescheduled to Monday, February 15th due to the spring primary election on the 16th. The spring primary election is a special election for legislative offices and a primary for state superintendent of public instruction. There are no city offices that will be on the spring primary ballot. Hours for in-person voter registration and absentee voting for the February 16th election are Tuesday and Thursday, February 2nd, 4th, 9th, and 11th from 1 to 4:30 p.m. at City Hall, and also Friday, February 12th from 1 to 5 p.m. at City Hall. This and much more information concerning the primary election can be found on our city website. That's all I had. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Alder Pipeline will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, seconds.
We have a motion and 2 seconds to adjourn at 6:42. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? All right, we'll stand adjourned for just a few minutes, and we will reconvene with the committee of the whole meeting. Thank you.
I'm good, yeah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Columbus Common Council's Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February 2nd. Sun Prairie, what's his name? The groundhog, Jimmy. Jimmy said there's going to be an early spring. I'm going to go with that. Okay. Jane, would you please take the roll call?
Present.
Pifron, Reed,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
Tone,
Here.
Adams,
Present.
Gray,
Present.
McCabe.
Here.
All right, this meeting has been noticed with state statutes and local ordinances. And number 3, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. If there are no alterations.
All
Adams
the,
moves to approve the agenda.
Gray will second.
Okay, I have a motion by Adams and a second by Gray to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, agenda's approved. Don't have anybody signed up this evening for citizen comments. Within the packet this evening on number 5, we have committee and commission minutes. Cable Commission from November 12th of 2020. The CHLPC minutes from December 9th of 2020. The Columbus Water and Light, December 17th of 2020. Library from November 17th of 2020. And also the library from December 15th of 2020. Were there any questions or concerns with any of the minutes, committee minutes? Okay, seeing none. We can move on to number 6, which is review and to discuss the Hibbard Street final assessment report. Administrator Ellison was going to chime in here and then likely toss it to City Engineer Jason Letha.
Thank you. Yes, with the Hibbard Street project essentially done, except for maybe some lump sum items, the items subject to the special assessment have, compared to the preliminary report, the final tallies are in, and so now we can finalize them and kind of lock that special assessment in and start or continue the process. And I think Jason has some of the details about the actual numbers, and we'll go from there, and if anyone has any questions, just let me know.
Thanks, Kyle. Can everybody hear me good?
Yes.
Okay, so tonight, when we're looking at the special assessment, I just want to kind of hit a few highlights. As Kyle had mentioned, this will be the final special assessment for the project. We have all the final totals and costs accounted for. And a couple things to note. There were no obvious changes to the assessment policy that was set for this in the resolution. So as you recall, we were assessing full cost for curb and gutter, full cost for concrete driveway aprons, full cost for sidewalk, 25% of the cost for the new sidewalk in the terrace areas. And that 25% is basically splitting the cost amongst all the properties. So it's 25%. Normally it would be half and half. But with the cost spread out over, the cost was allocated through 25%. And then 15% of the storm sewer cost within the right-of-way, with the city paying 85%. And so there was a couple different storm areas. There were some credits that were applied. If everybody recalls correctly, there was a driveway credit for 219 Hibbert Street. There was a sidewalk credit provided for 2 corner lots. And then there was also a storm sewer credit provided for a couple projects that had frontage on Charles Street. And then there was also, I believe there was a sidewalk credit provided for similar properties that had a frontage on both Charles and Hibbert Street. So with that being said, all of those calculations remain the same. The final totals did vary. There were 11 properties that had decreased assessments from the preliminary. There was 16 that went up slightly. The average increase was $330. The average decrease was $378. That was really dependent upon the size of a driveway apron and if there was any changes to the storm sewer during construction. So we may have increased a little bit more pipe or added an inlet to improve drainage. So there might have been a slight adjustment in cost, and so some of those properties might have went up. Some people had a slightly larger driveway apron. They requested that during construction. Can I have another 5 feet, or can I have a larger apron? Those costs obviously are directly billed back to them at 100%, so that would have attributed to those costs. On the flip side, some people went down because we had the way we had kind of measured the sidewalk initially. Some people had a very wide apron and didn't feel they needed all of it, so they requested again to maybe shrink it a few feet. So there was some infield adjustments that really contributed to that. And then there was 2 property owners that had no change to their assessment. So I would say that's kind of like winning the lottery. We guessed right, and the quantities and the measurements and the prices all came in at the end of the job right where we thought they were. So it's not uncommon. Obviously, we've done many of these assessments over the years that have some fluctuation in the final prices, but there really wasn't anything that contributed to these fluctuations other than generally storm sewer and size of driveway aprons. So I would say it's pretty typical. The assessments as a whole, I think, were down a couple $1,000. The final assessment, I believe, in this packet was 125,51, and I think we were at 128,000 and change initially preliminary. So I mean, it was down ever so slightly. But again, I think that was just due to the balancing of the final measurements coming in. So as a whole, those were the highlights on it. I just wanted to kind of lay that out there and see if anybody had any specific questions to the assessment or the changes that you see on any of these. So I'll open it up. If anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to see if I can find answers for you.
Anybody have any immediate questions? I don't see. I mean, there's a lot of information in here, but thank you for that description, Jason. Is everybody okay to move on then? All right. We'll forward that to the regular meeting for approval then.
Thank you.
We're going to move on then to number 7, which is review and discuss the Rupert and Milky Task Order number 2021-01, Water Quality Trading Coordination. And that I would assume we're going to have Jason Letha chat with us about that again. Let me just get to the right spot in my packet here. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So this task order is for the water quality trading, and those of you who recall last year, we also had one for 2020. We've been doing these annually because it's a reoccurring program for, I believe it's 10 years with 2 of the property owners and 5 years with 1 of the property owners. This task order is significantly less than last year's. We have a lot less to do. We've implemented phase 1, so we've planted the cover crops. We've implemented the buffer strip measures on the different properties. We coordinated with the county. We've got approval from DNR, and everybody signed off on it. So we're up and running. We have the credits, but what we have to do is we have to monitor this for 21 because those cover crops will be removed, and the farmland will be utilized for 2021. And there will be some cover crops and some additional improvements later on in the year. So again, the county does coordinate that, but we do coordinate obviously with the county and the DNR to make sure that we're in compliance with the permit. We also have been processing the payments. So when those payments come in, we're doing review on to make sure that they're in compliance with the agreements. and that all the measures have been completed to authorize payment from the city. So right now, this is an hourly contract, so we just estimated hours in here, based off of what we believe, would be adequate to complete the work. Right now, we're estimating about 40 to 50 hours worth of effort. If we don't spend it, we certainly don't bill it, but, that's kind of, since this is kind of the first year of reduced effort, it could be significantly less than that. But we're thinking obviously that each property will have some coordination with it and some payment, invoice processing and things with it. So our thought here is that we'd like to get this in front of you and get it approved. This will take us through the end of December for this year, and it should cover all the services associated with the water quality trading. So I guess go into a little more detail on the scope, but I think it's all kind of listed out here in the contract, and obviously with the level of effort spreadsheets included at the end to show you the breakdown of personnel and estimated time for the 3 different properties in the county coordination. So any questions on the task order or the scope or fee?
Seeing no questions? If there are no questions, is everybody okay to move that forward to the regular meeting? Okay. All right. We'll move on then to number 8. Review and discuss Rickert and Milky's task order number 2021-02. It is 2021 street maintenance. Specifically crack sealing and, what is it, crack seal? It's not mill and overlay.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
So this task order is kind of an annual recurring one as well. That's why you see both of these kind of early on in the year. As part of our street maintenance program that we've budgeted in the general fund, we do have the maintenance work that we do every year. If I recall right, it was budgeted for $75,000 of street maintenance. I believe there was a $10,000 allocation in there for county aid work within the city. We kind of run those hand in hand because, when we're processing these projects, we look at them holistically. Even though part of the application period or the application component of this is done by C.O.W, we certainly assist with the selection and the oversight of the county aid work as well. So what this is it's essentially that piece where we're assisting with the selection and the oversight of the county aid work in conjunction with the C.O.W staff. And then historically, we've always provided the bid documents. We've gone out, we've got contractor solicitation, we brought it back to you with recommendations. Many of you have been through this, know that we always do it and structure it in such a way to include a bunch of alternative bids, so we can kind of maximize the bang for the buck, if you will, with the bids to kind of maximize out the budget amount as well, to get as much done as we can. So this is kind of that same process. So we'll obviously work through project selection. We'll work through the design of, the improvements, whether it's crack seal or slurry seal, or in some cases we do some patching or overlays. We'll prepare those bid documents, bid those out, and then get recommendations back. That is typically what we would do on an annual basis, and so that's kind of the first part of this task order. The second part of the task order is, and I'll get to the budget in a minute here. The second part is for us to go through and do the street ratings for the city. Every odd year, the city is required by the state to do the Pacer rating or Whistler rating system and update that in the system. That's the basis for your state aid payment. So they calculate the lane miles and the condition of your roads when they factor that into providing you with that payment. And so that's required. Once those ratings are done, they are uploaded into the system and then they're certified. Every other year we do that. And, I'll apologize to the council. When the budget was being set last year, I guess it was just an oversight on our part where we knew it was going to be a rating year on an odd year, but we didn't put that in. There's about a $3,000, $3,100 effort to, actually it's a little more. I think we had $4,483 effort by Rupert Milky to do those updates. So we basically drive every street, we rate it in the system, and then we certify it at the end. This was a rating year, so we didn't actually incorporate that in. So I know when the budget was approved, I think it was at $12,000. When we look at the level of effort, we're coming a little bit over that. And it's just because that was the added piece that wasn't accounted for. I think it was likely just last year's budget was used because it wasn't a rating year, it was slightly lower. So I apologize for the fact that we missed that last year in the budget. So this work will incorporate both those components. So we'll do the actual street maintenance component of it, and then we'll also do the street rating and certification as part of that. And then I did want to throw in there again that we'll help with the county aid project like we do every year. Although we're not doing the application, we help out with the rest of the components with the staff. So just kind of listed it out and broke it down here. We would get started on this in spring, and we'd be looking at that work to be complete somewhere around the end of summer. We'll get those ratings into the system. Then for the improvements that we do this year will be updated, and those will be current in the 21 rating. So then we reflect that work this year in the ratings.
Thank you, Jason. Ian?
So with the new transportation utility that we're potentially adopting in the near future, this is going off of what we budgeted, which we intend to rebudget to stormwater. Our budget could be extensively different for this year, since we intend to potentially adopt this transportation utility. So I don't know how relevant any of these numbers are going to be in a couple of months.
I'm going to let Kyle chime in and
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. What we're hoping for, depending on if the transportation utility is approved, we'd be looking at a partial year collection. So I think in the first year, it'd be reasonable to continue as planned with the maintenance that we were normally going to do with the general fund budget. And then any money we don't spend if the transportation utility was developed would then be available for future years to reallocate to larger projects or more length of road to be milled and overlaid. I think we'd be safe going with this because whether or not we adopt a transportation utility, this is a good level of effort that would match previous years. We could always choose to add on more and add more to the task order, but I think this would match sort of what the expectation and planning had been.
And I'll also jump in here and add to Kyle's comment. The engineering cost isn't proportional to the dollar amount of work done. We have to do the base amount of work regardless of the cost of the work. So if we do $80,000 worth of street maintenance this year or $200,000 of street maintenance this year, our effort's still basically the same. We're just adding a couple extra quantities into the bid form and processing, but we have to go through the same procedures. So I would certainly tell the city that, if you approve this tonight, our level of effort, even if it would change later, you're right, we may take a little different look at this come, say, June or something and say, we may want to add a little bit more in, or we may want to do something a little different. We can certainly be dynamic and make those changes on the fly, and I think the level of effort that you have before you tonight would certainly cover those changes. So.
does that satisfy your concern, Ian?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Does that satisfy your concern?
For the most part, as far as the engineering portions go, it's just the actual scope of the work. I don't feel confident will remain the same at all.
Sure. With that said, is everybody okay with moving this forward then? Just the task order itself to the next regular meeting? Okay. Seeing a lot of nodding heads. Number 9, review and discuss the status of the transportation utility development. So we don't have any information in our packets this evening. It's just Kyle's going to give us an update on.
Yes, I wanted to sort of keep this as a recurring agenda item just to keep you updated. We had a timeline that we had laid out at the Committee of the Whole meeting in January on the 19th. So where we're at is last week we put out the information on the website. So there's information and articles on transportation utilities, as well as a link to the webinar from Rupert Milkie. And that is on the scrolling banner on the city webpage, and you can also find it under the residents tab when you look for a transportation utility. We also provided Rupert and Milkie the details on the parcels found in the city, as well as the zoning or use classifications, the very high-level use. So they have that information and are already kind of working to define the details, and working with Matt as well to find out sort of the differences between the classifications between maybe a small downtown storefront and a Quick Trip or something much larger. So they're working through those, but that has been going well. We did meet with Water and Light today as well to work on some of the expectations for the billing infrastructure that would support this, just so that we're sort of moving in the right direction and know the amount of information needed for a successful transition. And I think there was positive information today, so that's all good news. We also have the draft ordinance that has been circulated for a couple days now, and staff are still reviewing that and sort of tweaking the details there. The next upcoming thing is that we have some direct mailings that are going to go to all the residents that explain the transportation utility, as well as list some times and locations for the upcoming public information meetings. The dates for those, we've selected Thursday, February 25th and Thursday, March 11th. We're still confirming the location because there was also a commitment to stream it and make it available in different formats. So we're just kind of locking in those details, but that would be contained in the letter. So those are the sort of things that we've just accomplished and the things that are coming up. Were there any questions about the status, or I guess any questions in general?
I don't see any questions. Okay, thank you for the update, Kyle. Okay, we'll move on then to number 10, which is review and discuss the City of Columbus consent to the assignment of the developers agreement from ABS 1 LLC to ACS RBHS LLC for lots 1 and 5 through 10 in the city, or in the Columbus Commerce Center. And for that, this evening, I think we have Matt Schreiber. Hi, Matt.
Good evening. As I said in the memo, the land in the Columbus Commerce Center has been sold from ABS to essentially Red Bud Homes, which is their LLC that you see. And essentially, the bank that had the transfer, or the developer agreement, is basically transferring that developer agreement onto the new property owner. And much like we did in 2019, we are basically consenting to this transfer of the developer agreement, basically so we know who to send the increment to that was agreed upon in that developer agreement. So essentially, this is just a kind of a formality to recognize the transfer of the developer agreement, and so the city can uphold their end of the developer agreement.
Does anybody have any questions for Matt? Talkative bunch tonight. Okay, if there are no questions, then,
Oh, I got a quick question, sorry.
go ahead, McKay.
That is Red Bud Homes, does that mean there's houses being built out there redeveloped, or what?
No, we've had some preliminary talks about their intentions for the property, but if there's some commercial, they are conceptually, they have proposed multifamily on a few of the lots, but I mean, it's very early, but it's going to be a mix of commercial and maybe a little bit of multifamily. But as I said, I don't have any sort of proposals yet. They bought it more on a speculative basis, but it won't be single family homes. That I can tell you.
Okay, thank you.
I was kind of curious about that myself. All right. Okay. Everybody's okay with that, and there are no further questions. We can move that forward to the next regular meeting for approval. Okay. All right, we'll move on to number 11, which is review and discuss Plan Commission recommendation to approve a conditional use permit for Gates Automotive at 200 Commerce Drive. And we also have Matt Schreiber for this item as well.
So, this is very similar to a conditional use permit that council approved, I think in September of this year, or September of 2020, excuse me. So Gates Automotive, which bought the strip center out in the Commerce Center, bought the next door property, which is the former Shopko building, and they're converting that Shopko building into what we believe is the state's largest indoor showroom. They're doing a lot of online sales, and just from the early talks with Troy, they've been very successful at their location. And so they bought the next door property. They wanted to have the same agreement or the same approval as they had for their other property. So basically, they needed a conditional use for the outdoor sales, storage and sales of vehicles as it required under code. So they went through the conditional use process. You can see their application materials in the package. They're also, please note that there's a conditional use permit that will be recorded at the county once they receive final approval. It's also in your packet, and there are 10 conditions, which are very similar to the conditions that they have for their other property. The one thing to note that we cleaned up and clarified on is that all the vehicles need to be basically located within marked stalls that are shown on their site plan that they submitted. So I will be attaching the site plan to this document when it's recorded with the county, based on City Attorney Johnson's advice. So with that, we have the recommendation from Plan Commission to approve this conditional use permit.
Any questions for Matt on this conditional use permit for Gates Auto? Oh, Trina, go ahead. Thank you.
Just a quick question, and I'm overall really happy with it. Do you have a need to have any kind of limit on the number of vehicles at all? It seems like an area where it'll be fine if they wind up being pretty packed.
Well, I think the intent behind that item number 10 was we wanted to make sure they're storing them properly and they just don't park the cars, on the grass in front of the building where you can see it from the highway, where we just basically to keep it in a nice and orderly fashion that looks presentable. That was kind of the intent behind that last condition.
Thank you. So the marked stall should wind up limiting it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you, Trina. Any other questions for Matt? Okay, sounds like we can move that forward to the next regular meeting for approval. Number 12 is review and discuss the Plan Commission's recommendation regarding solar energy system ordinance. We have Matt Schreiber once again, and we've been working on this one on Plan Commission for a while.
Yeah, as Katie mentioned, we've been talking through this ordinance for probably 2 to 3 months at the Plan Commission level. Really, this started with a project that came to the city, and when we were looking at it, we were looking at our codes, and our codes really didn't clearly address how to deal with solar systems when they were going on either commercial or residential or any kind of property. So we felt it was best to kind of clarify, how they should be treated by our zoning code. So we started this process, and our city attorney provided a draft ordinance that we started with that I believe was from Cross Plains. And over time, staff and members of the Plan Commission conducted some research to what other communities have done. And we kind of ended up blending them to what you see tonight. So this was recommended from the Plan Commission with a fair amount of edits that I made kind of after the last meeting. And I guess I would note that making those edits, I did send them with City Attorney Johnson, who had some comments on that. So at this point, after we've seen his comments, I'm thinking it's either, we have two options. We can either, and I'll leave this up for discussion too, obviously, is we can move this forward or bring it back to the next cow with City Attorney Johnson's comments in it, and then we can review it again at that meeting and then move it to the March, I don't know, the first meeting in March. So, but I guess I'll just open up for comments and see what council feels is best. So, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I guess I would be interested to see the attorney's comments on the ordinance. I don't know how the rest of council feels, but I don't see that there's any sort of rush to put this through. I know we've been working on it for a while, but I think that, there's hopefully, well, likely not a lot going up right now.
Clarification real quick. Sure. So on item number 4, where it says, no person in control of the property shall allow or perform the installation of an obstruction. Including landscape signs. So if I'm reading that correctly, so let's say I put up a solar array on my rooftop, does that imply that my neighbor can't plant a tree or whatever that obstructs my solar? Is that the intent of number 4?
That is the intent of number 4, and I can tell you that took some time to a discussion at the Plan Commission level. And that was based off the draft recommendation or draft ordinance that we received from the city attorney. So.
Okay, I just wanted to do a quick, no, that makes total sense. I just wanted to make sure I read that correctly. All right, thanks.
Any other comments? Ian, go ahead. Ian, go ahead.
So looking over this really quick, of course, Columbus has a lot of historic buildings. I don't see anything in here that would restrict it on any historic properties. What would that look like? Because we obviously don't want giant solar panels on the governor's mansion or city hall or something. Like, what's that look like?
That was something that didn't come up at the Plan Commission level, but that's a valid point. Ultimately, it's up to, if that's something that council wants to see, I think that's something staff can look at.
I would be more comfortable that if it's designated historic or in a historic district, that they have to get a certificate of appropriateness. I think that'd be easy language to include.
And I think that language is probably in the historic preservation part of the zoning code already, but it would be a good idea to cross-reference the two so it doesn't get forgotten.
Thank you, Ian.
Yes,
Trina?
and I'm also liking that idea. Otherwise, just having a extra little sentence by the area where it's talking about not on the front facing structure to the road, something along those lines.
I guess, I don't know, that to me, Trina, I think that there are a lot of homes in this area that have both sides of their house facing the road. I think that would be much harder to implement Administrator Ellison wants to chime in.
Under subsection 5 and then paragraph 3, so in the residential zones and in the central business, you wouldn't be able to have that system on the front slope of a pitched roof, and I'm assuming that means street facing, front street facing, unless there's no other location. So I mean, I think
Right.
some of these things are in there, we just have to dig through, but, you know, I think with the questions, maybe there's time for us to get more information on that.
Go ahead, Trina.
Yes, so in the same section, I was just wondering if we could alter the language slightly to, just require permission. Because right now it sounds like, well, that was their only choice, so they had to do it. I would just like to have an extra little step in there.
Ian Gray.
I see what Trina's getting at, and I do agree that, you shouldn't, it does sound like it can just default that they're allowed to do it if there is no other option. So we should clean that up a little bit. And I really do think that it should come down to like a certificate of appropriateness, because, I mean, a historic home, solar technology is evolving so quickly, and there are some things that will look appropriate on a home. So I think them being able to, a historic property could still potentially have the solar unit on top of their property, but it has to look in a certain way to be approved. So I just think we need to clean that up and make it more specific.
Just remember that each one of these solar facility systems, has to be approved by Plan Commission and Council as a conditional use. So there's nothing that just can be done without somebody at the city level looking at it first.
And I think that's a really good point. I don't know if the council will forever be sympathetic to historic buildings and the preservation of our city, though. So I think there needs to be a loophole, a catch-hold of it necessitating a certificate of appropriateness.
Thank you, Ian. Mayor Tome.
I've got a few questions. I guess the reference that I'm seeing in here quite a bit, the City of Columbus may require sun and shadow diagrams. Is that language that has appeared in other ordinances?
Yes.
All right.
I think that one came from I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but I think that came from either Madison or Middleton's solar description, or solar array ordinance, excuse me.
Just wondering if there should be more of a description or a reference or definition of what that means, because that seems like that could be very subjective, depending upon who's looking at it. I think that the neighbor planting a tree scenario, how long do you forecast the growth of the tree? Is it for the lifespan of the small solar energy system for 10 years, or is it 50 years? So, I don't know if we need to put that in here, but I just don't know what the sun and shadow diagram is, I guess, at this point, since it's new. The other thing is the small solar energy system. Is that defined anywhere? Are there limitations on that?
At the very beginning.
Okay.
You cut off at the end, but number 1 defines the individual solar energy system.
It doesn't really, I get that it's for single residential, commercial, or industrial property, but I guess, a small solar energy system could be used to kind of offset or reduce your electrical usage at the home, or what if you wanted to replace your electrical usage? You'd need a much larger system. So I just don't know if this needs to be defined by, the total output, or et cetera. It just seems to me like as this solar energy gains ground and becomes more popular, I just don't know if we need to have that more well-defined. Maybe that's pointless, though. Just wanted to point that out. The other thing was on the historic home part of it. Attorney Johnson, you may want to look at the HLPC code to see if there is any reference in there about the solar panels. I know when we were reviewing that ordinance last year, I don't know if I saw a specific reference to that.
I would be very surprised if there were solar panels in the historic preservation code, but the certificate of appropriateness that Ian was referring to, that language is in there, and I think something along that process is probably not a bad idea for a historic building.
Okay. I know when we were looking at examples of other communities or updating that ordinance last year, there were other ordinances in the state that we found that had specifics about the solar systems on historic buildings. They were a bit more updated than what we have, so I just wanted to mention that as well. Thank you.
Would that potentially fall under, like, I know you're, on most historic buildings, you're not allowed to change the facade, so, or like make it remain the same, or get approval to do otherwise. So, Ian Gray.
And Katie,
Yeah.
I totally get what you're going for there, and it could be argued that way, but it could also be argued the other way is the problem. So I think sometimes redundancies are necessary just so that it's clear and concise. So I think this needs something talking about the certificate of appropriateness.
I don't disagree.
I think the other portion of it not being allowed facing on the forward-facing part of a building, I think that could become quickly outdated as well. So I think we need to have some sort of an approval process, because like when you look at, say, Tesla's new roof tiles, they look more attractive than a conventional shingle does now. Are we not going to allow that on the forward-facing part of the building? That would be absurd. Of course, we should allow that, but by the way this ordinance is written, it would not be allowed to have that sort of roofing put on your building. And so I think we need to have more of a catch-all approval process instead of a strict where it can be.
Thank you, Ian. That's a good point. I kind of think about when I think about these solar panels in the front and back and sides, but truthfully, I think, it's going to come down to where are you going to get the best sunlight and what existing obstructions are already in place. There's going to be a lot of things that go into it. Similar, I mean, when everybody started getting these big satellite dishes on their roofs, a decade or more ago, there's not always much you can do, but you can have faith that I guess that the technology will catch up and hopefully make it a little more appealing as it catches up. So, but I think given Matt some really good feedback, I think we'll likely should have this back at the next COW with some amendments.
I agree.
Yeah. Paul Piperon, did you want to speak?
I'm going to echo or bounce off of what Alder Adams was saying, and I personally struggled with this one on the Plan Commission as well. Basically, somehow telling your neighbor what they can or cannot do when you put a solar array on your property. I was having issues with that, so I'm not sure. I know we went round and round, and I think it's probably done to the best that we could have come up with. With that said, is it written the proper way? I don't know. I think there still has to be some work done on that. And then I have just a couple, maybe too small, far off in the weed items, but some grammatical stuff. Paragraph 1, sub 5, sub B, sub 1, wall or fence should have a period. And then if you take that 1 and go down 2, 3, 4, 5, nearby roads should have a period. And then the bid sits all the way at the bottom of B, owner's expense. I would argue that expense should be small e with a period at the end.
I'll make those edits as well.
Okay. All right, so we'll move that, we'll bring that back to the next cow. All right, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
So we'll move on then to number 12, which is review and discuss, oh, sorry, we just did that. We'll move on to number 13. Review and discuss position description and recruitment plan for the wastewater treatment plant vacancy. And for that this evening, we have Dave Dernberger, our Department of DPW head. Hi, Dave.
Everyone, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, thanks.
All right, so as Kyle said earlier, John Naaman retired after 40 years. The position description hadn't been updated in quite a long time. It was very generic. So before John's last day last week, I took the opportunity to have him give me a tour of the entire plant. No way I could step in there and run that thing. But it was very interesting. And as I looked through the old existing position description, I found it was just too generic. It lacked a lot of detail. So what we did last week, we took the opportunity to reach out to some neighboring communities. We got actually really good responses. Mayville, Beaver Dam, Middleton, Sun Prairie, to name a few, sent in samples of position descriptions for personnel at their treatment plants. So I was able to read through those along with taking my observations, and I updated the position description, mainly changing verbiage in the essential duties and responsibilities section. The position, operator A, is the primary position at the plant that needs to hold certifications that the state requires to operate the plant. So what we're asking is, ultimately we want council to approve this change in the position description. And attached in your packet, we do have a recruitment plan. I think I'm going to turn it over to Kyle just to maybe talk a little bit about the urgency of this. I think everyone knows the urgency, especially in light of the fact that we now are losing a second experienced person down there.
Yes, thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. So yes, the thing I wanted to highlight, I guess, was we do have a recruitment plan in here that talks about in sort of a fully adopted position description. We would hopefully advertise just after the next meeting, and we would run through the different selection criteria and processes, and then hope that we would have someone on board by April 19th with an offer made right at the end of March. If there isn't a lot of concern with the position description as it is, I would like to consider advertising with the draft position description, and we would list it as subject to final approval, but that would move everything forward 2 weeks. And timing is pretty critical on multiple levels. Obviously, the plant is very, very critical, and Water and Light, we're developing the plans for them to help us. That can't go on forever, and so we do need a permanent solution there. And so I think moving it forward would be good, but also snow plowing, those two positions are also part of the snowplow crew. So there's going to be a lot of ramifications, and if we can move it forward, it would probably be helpful to the plan.
Yes, sounds like it. Ian Gray.
And everything looks good to me. My only question is, where did the wage
So it comes from a combination of looking at existing staff as well as the surveys that are out there from the professional organizations, as well as other communities of similar complexity and size, and sort of what the ranges that they're hiring in right now. So it's sort of a combination of three different things that we put forward into a range that works.
And that makes sense. I would have liked to see some of those numbers and how we arrived at that salary range is my only concern. I do feel the need to move this forward as quickly as possible and get it going. And my concerns could be completely, they might not be founded in anything. I don't want to underpay them and not have someone come on board.
Any other questions for Kyle or Dave?
I just got a quick question, Carl. Is there, I don't know which employee is left down there, but does he have enough experience and certifications to move up or no?
So unfortunately, with the timing of the last hire, which was I think was January of 2020, and then the onset of COVID, the DNR, the certification process was sort of a in-person process in the certification, and so none of that happened because they shut down all of their certification, and right now it's only if after you can justify an emergency that you can access their certification exams. The bright side is we certainly have an emergency now, and we do qualify to make sure we can try to maintain our compliance. I don't think right now, because to be an advanced operator, they're looking for at least 4 years of experience, and we don't even have really one licensed year yet. So unfortunately, we're kind of left with the least senior person right now being the only person.
Well, I guess we're going to move this forward and get it out there in the world, and hopefully we can get our issues solved rapidly, crossing my fingers. Go ahead, Kyle.
So is the consensus to move it forward as presented, or would we like changes or look at it one more time?
I'm comfortable with the preliminary.
I'm comfortable with the preliminary.
I am as well with the as presented.
Okay. All right, we'll move that forward. Thank you, Kyle. Number 14 is review and discuss city services bid for plumbing services for 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, yes, I have that one too.
All right.
So I believe prior to my arrival, you had considered and approved some other municipal contracts for HVAC and other contracted services. This one is very similar. Plumbing services for any city-owned property or facility. The way we handle things right now is that our staff will take a look first at any plumbing issue that pops up. We do have, good qualified mechanical inclined people on the staff. We fix things whenever we can, but when it's outside of our skill set, we will have to bring in a company for help. So we did go out to bid. We only had one company return their bid, and that is the number one plumbing company. In your packet, you have the labor rates and the markup. And I guess we are asking for approval on the number one plumbing company.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any questions on the number one plumbing company? Great name. Seeing none. Is everybody okay to move that forward for approval? All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Dave. We'll see that back at the next regular meeting for approval. Number 15 is a motion, or I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned.